Hello everybody. So we have to make sure everything works. I'm coming to you obviously not from my studio, so let's see. I have my iPad here so I can see who's in the chat. All right, so everything is working. Oh, that is Art Desafinados. Hello everybody. Looks and sounds great. All right, great. Hey, can you hear the guitar? Let me know if it's too loud. Because I might play a little something. If the guitar sounds good, I'm gonna play a little nice Harley Benton. Yeah. Yeah, does it sound good? I have my little Boss here, the battery powered amp, so hopefully it will last for the hour that we're gonna be together. All right. So, I think I will play something. I wasn't gonna play anything because I can't have my backing tracks or anything at all. But last night, very late, I thought maybe I could play this little 1 minute something song from Feel the Sky. It's a little guitar piece. It's called Rain, and it's a solo guitar little composition. It's very simple. And when I recorded it, I kind of wrote it and recorded it in the right, right there. And you always feel kind of bad about it because you're like, man, this is what people are going to remember. But then when I play it live, a few times I played it as an intro to Edge of the World. And I always felt that it was supposed to be just a live thing. So maybe I'll just play it for you. Hey Indrajit, what's up? It's good to see you. And I'll just play it for you. I don't know how it would sound because I decided last night, but I played a couple of times. I think I remember it, so I'm just gonna play it. And hopefully you can hear the guitar all right. And it goes something like this. All right, so just a little something so we keep up the tradition of playing a live song every week, right? We don't want to get too, we don't want to be slacking with that because, then you get lazy and you stop playing and it's better not to relax too much. So anyway, beautiful piece, beautiful. Well, thank you. Thanks everybody. I know it's just a little something, but it's better than nothing, I guess. But it's one of those songs that really you kind of, every time you play them, you're like, maybe I should have done it like this or like that. So it's pretty fun to go back and revisit. Very nice. Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. All right, so as you can see, I'm not home or at my studio. I'm actually somewhere else. And we're only here for a couple of days. I'm going back tomorrow morning, very, very early in the morning. But this is a guitar, and Alex noticed already. It's a Harley Benton, and it's a really bad guitar. But it's like $80 or 80 euros. And I bought it to live here. So we come here not very often, but we come often enough that I don't want to go from one place to the next always with my guitar on the plane and in the car or on the train. And so actually in a couple of places I have cheap guitars and I leave them there, and then I only fly myself, and then I have a guitar there. And usually now I'm using my Boss here because I could carry it this time, but otherwise I just plug it into my iPhone with eRig usually, or iRig, and I just play software guitar, which is the only time actually I play software guitar, pretty much. So from that sound, I'd say Spain. Yes, I am somewhere in Spain. Although, yeah, the piece is actually very simple. I would feel bad about saying that it's inspired by flamenco. It's really not, but we can get into it some other time. But it's based on a very simple fifth chord, because I was thinking at the time, just as a little meditation, I was playing fifth chords and try to make them into something more. And then I came up with this very simple, idiotic minor thirds and seconds, and then the fifths and the fourths. And I said, well, I wonder if I could make a whole piece out of that one simple idea. And 90% of what you heard is based on fifth chords, and then with just a little add-ons that you can use. And then I split it like this, so they kind of become two fifths, one over the other. It's really simple. And I hate sometimes talking about songs because you talk about them and they sound so interesting, but that's all after the fact, right? And I'm always very careful not to give the false impression that I know what I'm doing all the time. I don't. Most times I just play, and then if I have to show it to somebody, then I go over them again and say, well, yeah, that's what I did. So don't feel that you have to know all this stuff, because most times I don't know it. And I have it on good faith that a lot of people who play very well, they also don't know very much when they play. They don't overanalyze. So I would suggest you do the same. And so yeah, I guess the technical part is taken care of. You can all hear me. So I'm going to give you a little bit more of the ear training we did last time. Okay, we're going to keep it short today. I don't know how long the connection is going to last and how good it's going to be. So we'll talk about ear training for those of you who could do everything we did a couple of weeks ago. All right, remember you were supposed to be able to sing any note, or to at least approach it with a little slide or glissando. And then you were supposed to practice your sound meditations, which was holding a note in your ear. So you could hear a note, and then when the note stops playing, you can still hear it in your mind, right? So basically, we're training our ears to not function as much as regular people. Regular people think they're hearing with their ears, but we kind of become more and more familiar with the fact that we hear in our brains, and our brains is good because we can control them, and we can train our brain much better than an ear, right? And so we're trying to bring the focus from the outside all the way to the inside. Okay? So, Kevkelios, what's up? What are you training used for? Chord, melody, or solo? Yeah, that is a good question. Let's get to that after the masterclass, all right? We'll answer it in the Q&A, but basically for everything. And today we're actually going to it's actually a very good question and pertinent, because we're going to talk about a little bit about chords today, okay? So I'm trusting that you can sing a note, and you can kind of hear the sound of a note and be able to repeat it, all right? That's basically what I'm asking. And today actually is a little bit about those chords thing that Kevkelios asks about, because the first exercise I'm going to give you is about meditation on sound, but this time with two notes at the same time. And this might seem a bit beyond the previous level, all right? The title of this masterclass, I think it's Basics Part 2, and this sounds a lot more than basics, but it really is not. It's important to train your ear to start hearing notes in groups, because most methods, they give you all the intervals first, the fifths, the thirds, which is of course extremely important, but then they say now recognize this chord or that chord and so on. And that becomes very hard because you've been trained to listen to all these discrete notes, right? So you hear a C, E, and it has a sound, and the A to F sharp has another sound. But then when you put them together, your ear gets confused because you've practiced all these discrete intervals. And so I found that it's actually very beneficial to start as soon as possible, at least acquainting your ear with the fact that most times you'll hear more notes at once. And that's the other thing that's extremely important when you are playing and jamming or improvising or composing. Most times your context is not of single intervals. You're usually playing over a progression. And sometimes you know the progression if it's your own song or you're playing covers, and sometimes you don't know the progression if you're just jamming with people. And so it's very important to locate at least the big families of chords, and then you're able to respond. So actually, every time I hear any chord or combination of notes, something in my head goes like, okay, I know that sound. And when I hear that, I can access, whatever scales I know that I can use, or whatever modification of the scale, whatever modes. I can do all that just by hearing the sound. And that sound that I hear, it's usually not made up of discrete, single, separate notes, right? It's made up usually just a bunch of noise, and it all comes at once. And so the first exercise is very simple, and it's the same as a couple of weeks ago, but instead of just listening to notes, I would suggest you play for 15 to 20 minutes every day. If you only have 10, that's fine, but just a bit longer than usual, and you play 2 notes at once. Completely random. They can be close to each other, or they can be far away, or even more. Okay, and don't expect anything from this, as always. You just listen to the sound and let it ring in your mind. The purpose of this, and I will teach you now the second step. So keep in mind that the first step does not require the second step. So you don't have to rush to the second section. The first exercise is just simply to listen. You can play 2 notes. If you feel like you can play 3 notes. Try to stay away from chords you already know. So if you know your C chord, yes, I tuned the guitar because this is not a great guitar, and I tuned it for the little piece I played, and so some of these chords might not sound too good. Let me just play them up here. So this is a chord, but I will try to not think of it as an E major. I'll just listen to it. Okay, I just listen to the whole sound. And if you've done your homework from a couple of weeks ago where you only heard 1 note at a time, you will find it jarring. You'll find that, wow, I thought I could hear notes, but now I just hear a bunch of noise and a ball of sound. So that's the first exercise. You don't worry about it. You relax your brain and your ear. Listen to the chords or to just 2 notes. Let them ring. Just let them ring, nothing else, all right? A few minutes every day for however long you need to. I always say weeks or months, but it depends. It depends where you're starting at. It depends on the condition of your ear. I often say that I never had a big problem with the technique on the guitar, but the ear was not my strong suit, so I really had to work hard at it. And I also noticed that I worked very hard on it for a long time, and then when I tried to relax a little bit because I got tired of it, then I started to see some benefits. And so I don't know what to tell you, right? If it's because I worked so hard in the beginning or because I relaxed. So I suggest you probably know about your own learning process a lot better than I do. But my suggestion is 10, 15, 20 minutes every day. Now, of course, I don't have any overlays today on the screen to let you know what I'm going to talk about, but I will provide chapters when we're done. I'll put chapters into the timeline, so if you're watching this later, you'll be able to jump from one exercise to the other. All right, so the next exercise is also extremely important. And well, there's 2 more exercises. And the second one is one that you probably heard people talk about. And I'm going to make it a lot simpler for you. Okay, I'm just going to ask you to record with the guitar, or better still, with a little keyboard, or just programming it into a MIDI player. And you program major triads, so major chords, and minor triads. The reason I prefer you do it on an actual, either a keyboard or something you can program, is I don't want you to play chords that are too big. Even if it's just a major chord, this chord has 6 notes. Of course, it only has 3 notes, but it actually has 6 sounds because I'm playing 1 note per string. Let me get rid of the delay. And I prefer if you played just triads. Now, if you know all your triads, then by all means, play your triads like this. But if you don't, and a lot of people don't know the triads too well, just program them on your DAW. So you go root, major third, and 5th, and then root, minor third, and fifth. And then you can just copy and paste them and just move them around randomly, right? Because you can do C major, C minor, then copy them like, I don't know, 200 times, and then randomly you just grab one and you transpose them like a half step, 2 steps, or 3 randomly. So you have like 200 chords, and they're 200 triads, which means that they're very easy to listen to, okay? And I suggest you start with just root position. So you go root in the bass, the third, and the fifth, all right? We'll get into inversions much later. So root, third, and fifth. And then you play it back. You play it back and you just start guessing in the beginning if they're major or minor. And again, this might seem advanced. Usually people go with thirds and fifths, but the truth is that most times you'll be relating your playing to major or minor keys, right? Even if you're doing modes, most things are based on the big distinction of major and minor. So that's what we want to get up to speed with. And of course, I prefer if you knew how to sing and recognize an augmented fourth, but or a major 7 ninth chord. But the truth is, your biggest use of ear training in the beginning will be to recognize what kind of what pool am I jumping into, right? The major pool or the minor pool, and then we'll worry about how to swim properly, right? But we have to be able to get into the right swimming pool, and so that's the first thing. All right, so record a whole hour maybe long of chords, let them ring, don't be in a hurry. You could do something like this, right? 4, and then leave a measure for you to answer 4. And at the end, if you have a multi-track recorder, you can just say it, right? So you can go, let it ring, leave some time for your answer, and then go major, and then play another one and go, hear it? You can say minor, and then you'll hear the playback giving you the answer, all right? But you don't need answers. You can just try and try and try. Eventually, you'll catch it. Now, this is the biggest sound difference probably in the world, major and minor. There's ambiguous chords. There's chords that are both in a way. We'll get into that later, but in a way they could be interpreted as major or minor depending on how you play them and how you voice them. But really, the major and minor triad sound extremely clear, either major or minor. Okay, and so that's the first thing you should worry about. So just to repeat it really quickly, record yourself playing or program a lot of triads. Always keep the root in the bass, followed by the third in the middle voice and the fifth in the high voice, and then program like 100 or 200 or whatever it is, and just go over them and try to recognize them. All right? Hope everything is clear. It's strange to me today if you follow, you guys. Are you writing in the... Okay, no. So you're either raptured by my lesson or you are asleep. So, assuming you're all awake, now we're going to move on to the third exercise. And the third exercise is one that you will not like, right, in the beginning. Listening, not asleep. That's great. All right, good. So, this is the exercise that is going to take the most time probably for you to figure out, depending on your level. But you can do this on a guitar, you can do this on a piano, you can do it on a sustained instrument if you want, like a synthesizer, right? You can do it with any instrument you want, provided you can play 2 notes at once. It's not a bad idea to do ear training with a piano because it's just a bit more clear sounding. It's not as rich harmonically as an electric guitar maybe sometimes. Or at least, use a clean sound and try to play consistently. So 2 notes, if you play 2 notes at the same volume. Here's the exercise. You take 2 notes at random on your guitar. You can stay in the range of your voice. Okay, so that's the first thing. Try not to go too high at the beginning or too low. And you play 2 notes at once, like this, for example. Right? And you listen very carefully. Now, in the beginning, if you're like me, and like most people I taught this, you'll hear just one sound. You can intellectualize it and say, well, I know there's more than one note, but really what you hear, it's one sound. What I wanted to do is do the same as you did last time, when we were trying to listen to the thing. So the first exercise is listening and putting it in your mind. And now when it's in your mind, you try to separate them, all right? Because actually when you hear this, you're listening to two notes. There is clearly two notes here, but your ear might not be able to pick it up yet. So you hear blah, like that. But really what you're hearing is bam, bam. And if you sing only one of those two, like this one, right? So you can go D. Now you can hear it. You hear it? Now you can clearly hear a high note and a low note. Right? Now try to sing in the high note. La, which is an F sharp. We call it F. 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 Now listen to it again. Right? Now you hear them. You hear the high note and the low note. Derizard says, I could not get the high note. Now I hear it. Yes, yes. And I could sing it to you, and of course you'll hear it. But the thing is, it doesn't matter if I sing it to you. It's not cheating. Because once you hear one of them, once you hear only one of them, now you keep it in your mind. That's why we did that exercise 2 weeks ago. And play both now. Now there they are. Right? Okay. Now, how do you do this if you can't do it? Right? Because it's not for sure that you'll be able to do this and sing them. Okay? As a matter of fact, it's pretty hard to do. So, do not skip the first exercise. The harmonic, which means playing more notes at once, just meditation thing. So you just, I don't know, not meditation, but whatever it is, you just keep them in your mind. Let's play another one, maybe something a bit less consonant, right? Let it sink in your brain, and now see if you can split them. Now, if you can't split them, it's fine. You probably won't be able to split them. So just play one of them. Sing it. If you can't sing it, go back to 2 weeks ago, right? So you sing it. You can say the name if you want. You can say D, or you can just say La, whatever it is, right? So I'm going to say D. D. Now the other note is so clear to me. D. Right? You can hear it. I'm sure. I don't know how the microphone is working, but it's extremely clear now. Once you sing one note, the other note becomes extremely clear. And when you get there, now you're going to hear that a lot more now. And I'm still playing it as loud, right, as before, but now I'm hearing it better. Now I go back to 2 weeks ago, and while I hear both notes, I start focusing on the one that I'm missing. In this case, this B flat, like it's minor sixth. And I put that in my mind. And now I see if I can spit it out of my mind, through my mouth, through my voice, and put it out there. Right? So I have D, La. You hear that? I hear that note, and I'm trying to catch it. And eventually you'll be able to, ta-da, you'll be able to play any two notes and separate them. And the limit to this is there's few limits. You could do it with triads later on, but not for today's video. But once you can hear and separate two notes, then you can do a lot more. And I suggest you do it this early on into your training, because a lot of other stuff, like for example, learning triads in inversions, like hearing a major or minor triad when the root is not at the bottom, really depend on the fact that you can go in and split a harmony, right? It's very important that you go there and you split them. Otherwise, it becomes very, very hard to do. And also when you are deciding on what scales to play, so if I hear this chord beneath, let's play it in C, right? C major seventh. If I can hear all these notes, separate, then I can decide what note to put against it. Or, right? Because I know what's in the chord, and then I can decide, okay, now I want this note against that note, or so on. And so when you improvise, you start improvising what it is you want to hear, and not just going, okay, C major 7, great, I can play Lydian, and blah, 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 go up and down, because that's kind of what we discussed as being amateurish, which is not a bad word. You know, it's great. I'm an amateur in many things, and enjoy them. But if you're here, I suppose it's because you want to take it to the next level. All right, so yeah. These are basically the 3 exercises. I'm going to go back over them really quickly. And I didn't write anything down because I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this today. And so hopefully I don't mess up. But the first exercise today was to do the sound meditation, like we did a couple of weeks ago with a single note. But today we do it with 2 or more notes. But I would suggest start with 2. So play 2 notes and just listen to them. Now, you watch the whole thing, so you know what comes next, but don't try to separate them, just listen to them. Right? This sound of 2 notes together is a very specific sound. Even if I don't split the notes, I want to be able to go like, okay, I hear it. I hear the sound. I don't have to name it. I don't have to recognize it. I don't have to give it a formula. I just have to be conscious of what these sounds sound like. So basically I want to be able to hold them in my mind, get them through the ear, but hold them here. All right? That's the first exercise. And you can do this as long as you want. And then the next one is you record yourself playing triads. Just play 3 notes, root at the bottom, third in the middle, fifth high up, and alternate between, well, not 1 and 1, you know, but mix them up randomly so you have majors and minors. So major triads and minor triads. Put them in playback and listen to them many times and go major, minor. Try to recognize them. Give yourself either a sheet of paper where you have the answers, or say the solution after the triad. So if you have this, you go, leave a little space for you to answer, and then say major. And then minor, right? And you can make it quicker as you get better. Eventually you'll just hear one and go like major, minor, major, minor. It will be so clear, all right? And the final exercise is to play 2 notes at once. Again, do it on the guitar or do it on any instrument. Start with a register that you're comfortable with. So my singing voice is probably somewhere down here. I can get to probably low E even, but maybe from the F sharp all the way up. And then I get here and it gets a bit too high. So I start here, certainly. But then when you get better, then you can always do it up here, up here, and sing in an octave lower, or even 2 octaves lower. So slowly you can work your way up. The reason is that sometimes going very high or very low in registers can trick your ear. So maybe you learn something very well in a certain mid-range, but then when you go too high or too low, your ear gets confused. So I would suggest eventually you start working your way up, okay? And then just sing it lower. And that's pretty simple to do. If you're on a piano, then start from the middle C, somewhere around that, and then slowly work your way up and down, especially in the bass. The bass is confusing, and it's not very clear sometimes, but it's very important because sometimes in certain kinds of music, the guitar is really not clear because it's playing very syncopated, short bursts, and the bass is the instrument that carries the song harmonically. So it's important that you recognize notes, not notes, but you know, what's going on, you recognize them way down as well. All right, so those are basically the 3 exercises. And I went a bit quick today because I wanted to make sure that nothing bad happened to screw up our stream. And I'm going to wait for your questions, as always. So it looks like the connection is good, so I'm going to stay on for a little while and answer all your questions. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here. I know it's a Saturday, as always, 6:30, at least here in Europe, and you all have many better things to do than stay here and listen to me, so it's very much appreciated. And I don't know, let's get to some questions. So wait, there's Kefkelios, which I think told me is from Greece sometimes ago, but Kefkelios, if you're there, I'm going to answer your question. which is, what is ear training used for? I mean, for playing chords or melody? Well, it's not used to play anything. It's used to understand what it is that you're listening to when it's passive, and what you're going to play, which is active. And the most important thing for me if you're a performing musician and you write your own music, if you are, because if you're just an interpreter, which is a great way of being a musician, by the way, but then you're not as concerned about this, right? But if you are an improviser or a composer, which for rock music, sometimes they kind of go together, then to me, it always felt like I was cheating myself to just play things randomly and hope that something good would come up. Or if I was on stage somewhere and I improvised, kind of play and hope for the best. And that's something that, I always felt kind of bad about it, because I always worked so hard on technique when I was starting out. I was in a band, and we were playing big places. For the age, I was 16, 17, and we were playing like pretty big stages with our own music. And so I was always concerned about getting better every show, just to be able to go through the show. But then eventually I realized that the instrument, the guitar, was not an extension, so to speak, of my mind and of whatever I wanted to play emotionally. It was really just an instrument, but not in the good. Well, let me 1 second, because I have to put the phone. All right. Are you guys there? Yeah, because I was getting notifications from messages. I forgot to put it on sleep. All right, so great, I'm still there. Cool. And so I always felt bad about it. And I said, well, I think if you are any kind of artist, I'm not saying I'm an artist, but that sounds a bit pompous, but if you're a painter, you don't splash paint on the canvas, at least not all the time, and hope that a tree will come out, right? If you splash paint on the canvas, you expect a splash of paint on the canvas, which might be exactly what you want, all right? But if you want to paint a tree, then you kind of have to eventually figure out what it is that a tree looks like, and you have to figure out how you're going to do it. And to me, there was a big bridge that I never crossed with music. And at one point I said, this is it, that's it, I'm going to do it. And because I never had a teacher, then it was really hard for me to find out what it was about ear training, and it was different. There was no internet, or certainly not this. And eventually I figured it out. It was the study of distances between notes, and it became extremely important. But going back to your question, when it came down to playing melodies, I kind of developed my ear, so I knew what a major scale sounded like, what a minor scale sounded like. I started learning the modes eventually. And I said, wow, this is interesting. Look how one note changes a whole mode. So I went into that. And then I figured that probably I could do this with chords. And I didn't know that a lot of classically trained musicians, that's what they do, right? But I figured that I could maybe go in there and split notes. And that was a huge step. So how do I use ear training now is pretty much every time I play, I don't have to see the guitar as a separate entity. I pick up the guitar, and hopefully what's here, travels its way down to my fingers, and I know pretty much where everything is and how it sounds. Okay, and because this can go very deep, you can study. We'll get into it. Soon I'll do an ear training video about scales, and you can really apply to anything. And you probably don't even need me to tell you, because once you get the basics down, then you can apply to everything. And there's always something you need to improve. And I practice ear training all the time, and I still find a lot of problems in my ear training, but not to a point where it impedes me. You see what I mean? Like we talked about technique a while ago, and I know I'm not the most technically proficient guitar player anywhere, of course, but I have my level of technique that allows me to play the music I want to play. And then I also know how to improve specifically certain techniques. If I come up with a song that needs a technique, I can probably sit down and practice it. And that's it. And you might find that bar with your ear training and decide, okay, this is how far I'm going to take it. right? And then if eventually I find that I have a weak spot, I can work on it. And the hardest part is these first steps. Just connecting your brain to what you hear is the most difficult thing. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but hopefully I did. The desired, I could not get the high note. Now I hear it after you told us. Oh yeah, I heard that. I read that before. You missed just a little bit when you started talking about you singing the high notes. Oh, okay. Missed only 1 minute. What you mean with the stream? That is art? Was there a problem with the stream on YouTube? And Kelios, I'm struggling with arpeggios to memorize. Do you have any pattern or what to fast memorize it? Arpeggios, you mean for ear training or for technique? Like the classic, that stuff? I can give you a couple of tricks, but we might have to do a whole video on arpeggios. And Indraji says, it gets tricky once inverse triads. Yes, inverted triads become tricky because, I don't want to get into it, but they do, like a major triad where it becomes inverted, you can invert a triad by saying, okay, C, E, G is my C chord. I could do E, C, G, E, G, C, sorry. You can have C, E, G as your triad, and then this C can go up there and go E, G, C, and then G, C, E. Now, these two inversions sound completely different because the first interval in the bass changes. And so when you have a sound like this, if it's in tune, the C and the E, it's a major third, and it's the first interval you hear in the bass. And then you have this minor third from E to G. Now when you do the inversion, the first interval you hear, it's a minor third. So your brain goes like, wow, is it a minor chord? But then the C hits it. So overall, I'm still playing the same intervals, but the actual sounds I'm hearing is a minor third plus a fourth. And if I'm playing a triad, there's no major third. I mean, there's a major third between C and E, but they're way out. You know, they're like this E here and this C, they're far away. You see what I mean? So to the ear, this sounds much more major than this. Now, of course, if you train your ear, the sum total of what you play is still a C major chord, and it does sound like a major chord, but this here, this minor third tricks you into hearing a minor chord. And then if you go to the next inversion, you get this sound, which is actually very bright because it has a fourth from the G to the C, and then a major third from the C to the E, right? So this is very major, and there's no minor third. And again, there is a minor third between this E and this G, but strictly speaking, it's a sixth. It's not, because it's an octave higher. So that's why inversions can be a bit tricky. But we'll have to get to that later. You know, this is it's a bit more advanced. But yeah, Indrajit, if you're there, then by all means, practice it. The Rizar says, yes, I had a short problem with the stream, only about 40 seconds. All right, well, hopefully if nobody else had any problems, you'll be able to go back and watch it. I'll leave this up, of course, on the channel, so. All right, and Kevkelios, you say technique. Yeah, well, I would certainly memorize, if it's for arpeggios, I would memorize major and minor arpeggios and diminished and augmented in all keys, but basically on sets of 3 strings. So if I'm playing just minor or minor, let's do minor. Right, sets of 3 strings, then sets of 4 strings. And then I would do 5 strings as well. And you do, right? And then you do it with 6 strings. That's what I would do. And always play all notes you can fit on a string. So I play the E, the G, and then work my way down. Wait, am I playing minor? Did we say minor? like that, and then, see? And then I do with major, I do with augmented and diminished in all keys. That would be a good starting point. And once you have major and minors, then it becomes a bit easier to do, you know, you can do major 7th, you can do regular minor 7th, right? And make it a bit more interesting. I was memorize all scales, not a string. It's hard. Sorry, Kev, I'm not sure I get what you mean. Maybe you can rephrase it, sorry. But yeah, so it's pretty cool to be here. I wasn't expecting to have a live. I'll be back next Saturday. I'll play a song for you again. And oh, more questions. No, feel free. Do ask questions. I have time. So as long as the phone is charged, I'll be here. Is there arpeggio or a scale for solo? Is there arpeggio or a scale? What I just played? No, those were just arpeggios. You mean this stuff I played? This is just it's A minor, and you play all the notes of A minor. So you play A, C, E, A, C, E. So I'm only playing the notes of that arpeggio. Now, when I have that ready, then I can add stuff to it. Right? So if I want to play, instead of a minor arpeggio, I want to play, what do you call it? A minor 7th arpeggio, then I can just add the notes. Right? I can play maybe a bit of a Dorian sound. All I have to do, add those notes. And ear training, of course, helps a lot with this, because you go like, okay, I want this sound, but I want it a bit stranger, a bit brighter, a bit darker, a bit more mysterious, and you have all that. Sorry, Kefkelius, yes, you mean in arpeggios? Yes. I was looking at arpeggio scale, and it's hard to memorize. Yes, well, everything is pretty hard to memorize, but the more you memorize things, the easier it gets, because you stop memorizing and you start seeing things, and not seeing things like you're high, but you see things because the guitar has a very strict architecture. You know, it's an instrument that once you figure it out, it's very easy to navigate. And so my suggestion is pick something, you know, a scale, an arpeggio, whatever it is, and really repeat it like 1,000 times. And then that part becomes mechanical, and then you can move on to the next thing. And before you know it, you can fit everything into anything on the guitar. The problem I see with people is that they have a hard time with sharps and flats. And so they learn a lot of stuff in C major, A minor, you know, even the modes, they do the D Dorian and they do the F Lydian, you know, everything that's natural. But then they have a hard time with flats and sharps. And that's where I would hit it, you know. I would really suggest people do one thing, maybe, like I said, arpeggios, major, minor, diminished, and augmented, but do it in all keys. And in the beginning, playing F sharp diminished is going to be a pain in the ass, but you keep doing it, and you realize that it doesn't matter. Like if you play F sharp major, it's F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. What am I going to do with all these sharps? Nothing. You play them, they're just notes. And when you get that out of your system, it's such a huge step forward. And I've noticed it's a big issue with a lot of people. So they learn stuff, but then they stop there, right? They stop at the easy part. And it's not easier to play natural notes at all. It's the same thing, especially on the guitar. You need a step-by-step to memorize? Well, I'm gonna give you the first step. Play it 1,000 times, and there's no other way. You have to get rid of the mechanical part. And the mechanical part is that you play it, and when you think you know it, you play it again, and then the next day you go back and you try it. If you don't play it like in your sleep, then you have to repeat it again. And you never stop until you can actually not make a mistake, right? It's impossible for you to make mistakes, then you know you have it memorized. Yeah, so you're struggling with it? Yeah, but I suggest maybe you're trying to learn too many things at once, which is useful to get, to keep things interesting. But when you want to really focus on something, you need to repeat it. Like, for example, I remember when I got into the melodic minor scale, right? I was already proficient in music, I think. I was pretty good with the guitar. I could play all my modes, the major, even the harmonic minor. But I really thought that I was missing something with this melodic scale thing because I knew a few of the modes and I liked them. And I was kind of putting it off. And then one day I said, this is it. I'm going to learn it. And so every day for weeks, I would play every day, every single position of every single mode of the whole melodic scale in all 12 keys. Took a few tens of hours, and then that's it. I will never forget it for the rest of my life. I can play any mode of any scale in any key in any of this stuff. And now the reason I want that is that if inspiration strikes, or if I want to go for that sound, I don't want the guitar to be a problem. I want the guitar to be a tool, but not a problem. I don't want to have to figure it out while I'm improvising. You see what I mean? I want to pick up the guitar and feel at home. I don't want to pick up the guitar and go like, okay, now let's work on it. I like doing the work before. So my suggestion is you just play, play, play. Thank you for your response. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so I will wait, of course, a couple of minutes because there's a bit of a delay for me. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, but just a bit of housekeeping. Tuesday, I don't know if I'll be able to have an Inside the Song. And I think the Inside the Song thing, I'm already, how many did we do? 13, 14? So maybe we'll go up to 20 or something like that. And then maybe those will be put aside for a little while. Maybe then come back later. I think it's still a good idea to watch them, but I think people might not be, it might be too much work sometimes for people. I think YouTube is more like, like those 5 things you should know, which could be useful, I think, but there's no tricks. And that's one thing I think we should all keep in mind. There's no 5 easy things. There's no, I know I'm bursting a few bubbles here, but there really is not. And I've had the fortune of being friends or acquaintance or actually playing with some of the greatest people in their field, like the greatest singers and the greatest, and it's all the same for everyone. They work harder than everybody else. And nobody is going to come up and go like, here's 5 steps to sing like Eric Adams or like Ronnie James Dio. It does not happen. Okay, so I understand some of these videos might be a bit hard, and I understand that some of these videos might be inspiring, but hard to follow, right? You go like, okay, I really understand why he's saying this, but I don't have time to do it. It can still be useful, but keep in mind that if something interests you, like if ear training is something of interest, you need to put your time in. And there's no other way to say it, and there's no guy on YouTube. I can't do it for you. Nobody can. And that's it. So I know you're all very smart because I've read your comments, and I know you don't fall for this stuff, but usually people go like, well, I tried YouTube, and 10 years later, or 5 years, I realized that it doesn't work. It can work, but you have to know what it is you want. And please don't fall into the trap of saying, well, if I watch YouTube videos, even mine, right? If I watch enough, I learn. You'll learn how to watch YouTube videos. You need to just do it on the guitar. And yeah, I know you don't need to hear this, but it's just a little rant because I see it so often. So you need to put your time in, all right? And whatever I can give you, I'm happy to give it to you. But if you're one of my students, I sit you down in a chair and I say, well, show me what you had to do last week, and you have to show me what you did the whole week. And if something is missing, we'll go over it again. And then next week, if it's missing, you'll do it again, and then again, and then again. And then again, it can take you a week, or it can take you 6 months. I don't care, right? So keep that in mind. And yeah. Thank you for your advice. These lessons are great. Thanks so much for taking the time to show us. That is art. You're welcome, of course. Well, I know now with the virus and thing, I know a lot of people just need a bit of, a bit of a push. So I'm planning on keeping doing these things, but especially now I think it's important. And so I don't mind, of course, sharing. And I appreciate you saying that. And thank you for your advice. You're welcome. Inspiring Masterclass, like usual. Thank you, Indrajit. So if there's no more questions, maybe we'll just leave it here, and next week I'll be at the studio again, I think. So, well, I'm pretty sure if I'm alive, I'll be at the studio. And I think I'll be able to play a bit of a song for you that I never played live again from Mystic Electric, and I'm kind of excited, kind of scared to play it. And I hope you enjoyed the little piece today. And you know, by all means, stick around, be here next week. If you're new to this, every Saturday at 6:30 Central European Time, we get together and do a live thing. And who knows, maybe eventually we'll change this format a little bit. Right? Maybe we can do, instead of me talking all the time, we can do something together, or more questions. I don't know, whatever. If you have any ideas, you are more than welcome to share. See you Tuesday if you're here. If not, Saturday. Well, Tuesday would be the Inside the Song. It would be a recorded video, and I haven't recorded it yet. And it's Saturday. I'm traveling tomorrow, so if I don't put up a video this Tuesday, don't worry about it. I will keep the Inside the Song going at least for a little while more, because I don't know if they're very popular, really. And it's a lot of work to put them together. So maybe it's just something that is not that interesting, but you know, I wanted to do it. So I think maybe 20 episodes will be enough. All right. See you next week. Yeah, Indrajit, you're all welcome. Alex, thanks for being there. See you next week, everybody. Bye. How do I stop this?